Our Connor Rogers is here, Fantasy Football Happy Hour, with our buddy Matt Berry a lot. He's been on this show a handful of times. That sounds like a fun show, dude. There's beer sometimes.
Our set is a bar, so you can imagine just when you go to work every day and you're recording inside a studio that was built to be a bar, and it's with Matthew Berry, who is just an absolute wild man. We have a really good time, especially I do it 5 days a week. The show is 6 days a week. It's absolute chaos. It's not all about fantasy football. It feels like it's sometimes 30% fantasy football.
And 70%. I mean, it's not even all football. Sometimes it's just riffing.
No, I found out the other day, Matthew wrote Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles.
I knew that.
And I've worked with him for 3 years. And I found out during the show that he was one of the writers on Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles. So that's literally how off the rails we could find ourselves.
Listen, that takes talent. I think it may have been a sequel of Crocodile Dundee, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was the third one, which is problematic. That many Crocodile Dundees seems alarming to me.
Listen, man, Crocodile Dundee was like Paul Hogan, just cash the check. Just cash the check. That was what he was doing. It's fine. Well, are we all cashing the check right now on our Crocodile Dundee?
That's right.
So we're here. We did not book you to specifically talk about the Jets, but in between the period that I booked you, you are a Jets expert, a Jetspert. In between the period of when I booked you and now, it is correct that the Robert Saleh has been fired. The Jets always seem to be kind of on a low boil of disarray, but this seems like something new. And the change to me, people were calling me and asking me yesterday on different shows. They were like, "Can this help? Is this a disaster? Is this pulling the plug?" And my feeling on it is it's very NBA. It's very like we just need a new voice in the room. The difference in the NBA is sometimes you can go out and go external. You can get a Doc Rivers. That is literally impossible to do in the NFL because you just don't know the personnel. You don't know the verbiage. You can go through camp, all that stuff. But it also feels to me, I did radio with Mike Tannenbaum on Sunday, and we mentioned a possible coaching change in New York just because they were looking sloppy. And he said he was getting deja vu because the Dolphins, when he was the GM, fired Joe Philbin in London. The reason they did that was because Dan Campbell was on staff. And Mike Tannenbaum went to ownership, is what he said on the radio, and said, "We have a superstar on staff. Let's try him out." So immediately when you promote a jacked former player who seems to take care of his side of the ball and understand, I immediately think about, hey, maybe they're giving him a shot here. Maybe they're trying to do something. Your read on the firing was what, Connor?
I think it was that Woody Johnson in an all-in year felt like Robert Saleh's energy was gone. And Robert Saleh, if you're going to hire a Robert Saleh, one of the big selling points of him is the energy he brings to a football team, right? And they're all the problems the Jets have had in previous years under Saleh with Zach Wilson or without Zach Wilson. There was a handful of games that they came out and surprised some people despite not being able to score any points or just complete dysfunction at the most important position in the sport. And this year, when you look at it and go, okay, Aaron Rodgers is healthy. They have a lot of pieces. They have a good mix of veterans and young players. This is the year that Robert Saleh has been waiting for. It was shocking, just the demeanor on the sidelines, some of the just lack of energy you hear by day standards. I don't know if he just got burnt out from the previous years or he felt like he's lost all power in the organization, where it clearly is Woody Johnson, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Douglas, and then somewhere below that was Robert Saleh. That I think it's shocking in a sense that this is 5 weeks of football and the Jets, as bad as things have looked, their last 2 games they lost basically at the end of the game. They missed a field goal and then Aaron Rodgers missed Garrett Wilson wide open and they could be 4-1. But I think Woody Johnson in an all-in year just said, we got to flip this switch right now. Yeah. We got to take a chance. Obviously, you brought up the Dolphins story, which is a really apt one. Jeff Ulbrich is a energy guy. He is also a very smart defensive coach. I get everyone's reaction. It doesn't fix the offense, right? That's on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers. That's either going to get better or it's not. But the entire team demeanor, Quincy Williams after the game in the locker room had a really interesting quote where he said something along the lines of, it starts with people taking accountability, and that starts at the top down. And everybody kind of looked around when he said starts at the top. Yeah. Unfortunately, as much as he's a player's coach, I think Saleh lost too many of the guys in the room. And it doesn't mean that they hated Robert Saleh. It felt like everybody got too comfortable with losing and not doing their job.
That's the problem. And that's why when you go through the lean times, I don't know if Robert Saleh ever had a chance because he never got to learn how to win as a head coach because he was saddled with bad with bad quarterbacks for the first 3 years, and it felt like there was just a lack. There was built-in excuses every single year, and I think when that happens,
Right.
there is no accountability because it doesn't have to be. Oh well, we have a bad quarterback. What are we supposed to do? Every win they had was a pleasant surprise, and it almost felt like, and maybe I'm being unfair. It almost felt like the Gus Bradley Jaguars, where it was just like such a hopeless situation that nothing ever happened and then it just ended. And maybe it was an unfair situation. Maybe if Robert Saleh in 5 years is an excellent DC with the Packers or whomever, he gets another shot, he gets a better quarterback. Maybe it's a different situation. It just felt hopeless to me. And then it felt like when there were actual expectations, Robert Saleh just wasn't up for it. And I don't know what that is.
Right. If he's just another coordinator that couldn't make the jump to being the CEO of the operation. And because you're the head coach of the team, right? So everybody's looking at the Hackett side of things. Well, the problem is Robert Saleh was a part of, with Joe Douglas, drafting Zach Wilson and hiring Mike LaFleur. Okay, that didn't work out. Then they hired Hackett. And a lot of people came out and said, like, okay, they got Hackett to get Rodgers. Saleh was the first guy at the presser, believe him or not, that said, I was hiring Nathaniel Hackett whether Aaron Rodgers was part of the plan or not. He just never, they got the Titans cast-offs, right? Keith Carter, the offensive line coach, Todd Downing, former offensive coordinator. Saleh never had the pull that he needed to hire an offensive staff that could supplement his shortcomings on that side of the ball. So when they built this great defense with him and Jeff Ulbrich and their defensive line coach, Aaron Whitecotton, and a lot of good assistants, it never caught up on the offensive side of the ball. But when you're the head coach of the team, hiring those guys and being part of the draft conversations and overseeing the flow of the game and how to manage the clock and when to use timeouts and why do we have 13 penalties in year 3 in another game, that falls on the head coach, whether people want to admit it or not. And while it's alarming, Woody Johnson in an all-in year just felt like he couldn't stomach it anymore, and they got to try something else. I like your NBA example because everybody keeps going, well, an interim coach never makes the playoffs. How many situations are like this where it's 5 weeks into the season? The AFC doesn't look very sharp right now. Aaron Rodgers is trying to get this offense right. But the Jets have a legitimate chance to still make the playoffs under Jeff Ulbrich, despite all of that. This is a very unique one-off situation.
100%. And the NBA does things that the NFL would never do. They will fire a coach if he makes the East Finals and just say, you know what? The difference between these finals and the finals is huge, and we need a new guy who can take that extra step. NFL teams never do that. Never happens. Now, if they go out, if they're one and done in the playoffs, and it's a great roster, that's a different situation. I'm curious, talent level wise, I feel like the defense has been more talented in years past. The numbers have been better in years past. I think the Son Reddick thing is brutal. I do think, listen, I love the fact that Will McDonald has emerged. Love it. I think he had his best performance by pressures over the weekend. That was somebody I frankly wasn't counting on. That's great. But talent-wise, knowing full well we haven't seen what the coaching looks like in a full game, the ceiling for this team is what? Like, you're looking at it and saying, okay, they have a new voice, whatever, but like just the 53 guys, the talent level is what in the AFC?
Right. If you just gave them an average coaching staff, this to me is a team that should have won 11 to 12 games. Yeah. And the fact you started out 2-3, you lost to the Broncos in inexcusable fashion. You started out so poorly against the Vikings that you're in this deep, deep hole and somehow still could have won that game. And what a lot of people are missing, Kevin, is they started out horrifically against Tennessee in week 2. Yeah. Will Levis put the game on a platter, and the Jets took it and ran with it to their credit. They had a really good second half, but that game looked hopeless. And then Will Levis handed them the ball, and everything changed at the end going into the half. So the Jets were in a scenario where things could have got really, really scary if they let that game get away against Tennessee. And I think they kind of felt like that was the case right now where, man, we have a roster right now. When you just look at the money, the assets, you're right. Put aside the Reddick thing. Jermaine Johnson is hurt now, so that puts even more pressure on Will McDonald. They're thin up front, and they know that right now. But they still have talent in the secondary across the board with 3 great corners. They got a lot of talent at linebacker. Quincy Williams is an all-pro. C.J. Mosley will be back, where you hope you can mask some of those issues up front, where you got to win. Now you got to get to 9 or 10 wins this year and get a wild card, when coming out of the summer, the expectation should have been 10 to 12 wins. But why I always had reservations with this team, I didn't pick them to win the division. I picked them to make a wild card spot, was I think they just have too many shortcomings on the coaching side of things that they can't overcome. And unfortunately, that's been the storyline just 5 weeks into the season.
The last thing I want to say on this is that people are like, well, why yesterday? Why so early? The Jets are unique in that they listen to and are reactive to the media. And I was talking to Foxworth yesterday, and he played for the Ravens for years, and I said, and he backed me up on this because he knows it better than anybody. The narrative going into the playoffs every year never seeps into Owing Mills, Maryland. Never. Oh, can Lamar win the big one? Nobody in that building is talking about it. No one's ever saying, oh, Joe Flacco can't win. It's like they're just going to go do it. They never see the media, and if they do see the media, they ignore it. The Jets are reactive, and Woody Johnson still reads the tabloids, and he reads the columnists, and he reacts to it. And I think that's why you see these kind of moves sooner rather than later, is because Woody, I do believe in the theory that I think was on First Things First. I think it was Eric Mangini said he didn't want to be embarrassed in London, where he's obviously got a lot of ties, who was the ambassador, but also he just doesn't want to be embarrassed. And that's the big thing with ownership to me is, when we say like the Browns went through the process, right? And people were saying in the league, they were like, owners don't want to eat crap, for lack of a better term, because they don't like going to the charity gala on Tuesday night and every rich person is laughing at them. They don't want that. And that's why these owners panic and get reactive and say, you're out of here. So that's the one thing. They listen to the media more than any other team. So
I think they listen to the media. I think they also read Twitter for the pulse of the fan base, maybe more than any other team. And the funniest thing is, if you want to pull out a microcosm of that, is this fan base, largely while Woody was away, despised the new uniforms they had. And the first thing he did when they got back was change the uniforms and basically went to the logo the fan base wanted, the color scheme the fan base wanted. And that was a good move, by the way, but it was really engineered by the start of the fan base, where that is how much they have the pulse of the fans. This fan base completely lost faith in the head coach. And what do you know? After 5 weeks of the season, they've moved on from that head coach.
Jets Twitter is by far the most influential Twitter in the NFL as far as decision making with their team. By far, no one's even close. But let's put that aside. All right, before we get to the draft stuff, which you're amazing at, you want to talk about Offensive Rookie of the Year, which I think is shaping up to be pretty interesting. Lay out what you think is about to happen, given the fact that at some point, probably next week, Malik Nabers will return.
So I loved Malik as, the value play going into summer. And now Jayden Daniels has come along and looks like nothing can stop him. But it's just remarkable to me, Kevin, that you look at last year, we had this battle between CJ Stroud and Puka Nacua, where Puka Nacua is doing stuff no rookie receiver had done in 50 years. And then CJ Stroud is just playing at a level that no rookie quarterback should play at, especially since Houston had a lot of adversity last year when he was there. They were trying to figure things out on the offensive line. There was no Stephon Diggs at the time. Tank Dell had moments, and then he gets hurt. Nico Collins is now Nico Collins, but coming into that year, I don't think we looked at Nico Collins the same way we do now. And that's because of CJ Stroud, right? And a new play caller and Bobby Slowick. They were trying to really lean on the run, and because of that, they had to rely on Stroud to go win them games. It's wild that just a year later, we're a near historic Offensive Rookie of the Year race again, where Malik Nabers is a guy that we could sit here and say, he could have 1,400 yards and 10-plus touchdowns, and Jayden Daniels can be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL already as a rookie, especially when you look at the MVP odds right now. I think this is pretty unique territory. I don't think it's revision history now that people be like, well, why did Marvin Harrison go over Nabers, and why did Caleb Williams go over Jayden Daniels? I think those guys are going to be really, really good NFL players. But what these two are doing after what CJ Stroud and Puka Nacua did, I don't know if we'll have a 2-year cluster like this with Offensive Rookie of the Year ever again in our lifetime.
I also don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I also don't know that the last 5 weeks of football have confirmed that Jayden Daniels has a higher ceiling than Caleb Williams. Because to me, I went on Simmons' podcast right before the season, and I said, Jayden Daniels is going to be the most exciting rookie in football because he already does one thing really well, which is he pushes the ball down the field. He throws those seam routes, the slot fades, and he did that better than anybody in the history of college football. They had more explosives last year than any team, including the previous record holder that was the 2019 Joe Burrow team. So if you can do that, you can do that against NFL defenses, I promise you, especially if you do it in the SEC. So I knew that'd be instant, but he's a savant at that. We'll see how that develops as far as his second pitch goes. He's obviously going to be a star for the next decade. We know that. But I'm saying Caleb Williams who's played a lot less football, played. I'm sure. I think the discrepancy in attempts was astounding. But give him time to build his toolbox up. He does not have that one sort of genius skill that Jayden Daniels has. I think they're both going to be really good for a long time. And I think that just let Caleb get comfortable. I promise you, if Caleb played 6 years and played in a bunch of different offenses, and at age 23 or whatever it was, Jayden Daniels was last year, Caleb Williams would have put up some incredible numbers and been more NFL ready in year 7 of high-level football.
College experience is so important at this position. Yeah. Jayden Daniels, a 5-year player. Michael Penix, a 5-year player. And those guys turned themselves into top 10 picks after, I remember when they were, summer scouting in 2023, they had day 3 grades, pretty consensus across the board from NFL teams, not just, draft analysts. So
Bo Nix too.
That goes to show you what Bo Nix is another guy that fell into that bracket as well. And then you look at, you're right. I mean, and I think we're starting to see the takeoff from Caleb, especially that he's looked good recently, and he's got Jacksonville bye week, and then I know Arizona is in that cluster as well. Like, they're going to see some defenses that he could take advantage of. I think the game will slow down for him a lot, and the way he could throw from the pocket and out of the pocket is a sustainable method to just be a big play machine.
Also, C.J. Stroud wasn't C.J. Stroud last October 9th. That built over the season, right? Like, we always exactly think about it. Especially, I see this with true freshmen all the time, where we go, oh, this true freshman doesn't look like that true freshman last year. And they go, hey, look at the true freshman last September. He was getting 5 snaps a game. Okay. Like, these guys build all the time, and our memories are very poor. Like, what's the Alice in Wonderland line? 'Tis a poor sort of memory that works only backwards. Like, just don't have so much recency bias. All right. Let's talk about the draft here. You're very good on this. You made your debut on NBC's college football coverage. Is that correct, on Saturday?
On Saturday, yeah, before Michigan-Washington.
What did you think about that game?
Surprised me that, not that Washington won. I knew they'd be desperate after losing to Rutgers, but that Michigan, they still have so much talent, and it feels like they are underperforming right now compared to what they have. Like, Mason Graham is probably a top 5 pick on that defensive line.
Yep.
Kenneth Grant that plays next to him is a first rounder as well. I think Will Johnson, it came into the year as a potential top 3 pick, and I think it's been a little up and down at corner for him. But Washington at home, I've been out there for a game out in Seattle. When that place is humming, there's nothing like it, in my opinion, and they really fed off the home crowd energy. And, they were the favorite, 1.5 favorite against the number 10 team in the country. You don't see that very often, and they took care of their business, which I was surprised in the manner that they did.
First of all, there's a Belichick on staff. Bill Belichick was on the sideline, so you have to account for that. But here's my thing about Michigan. I don't think people will realize this because people just don't follow recruiting as much. The only teams that have won the national championship in the modern era either had a top 5 recruiting class or a elite quarterback. Most had both. But the only teams that didn't have a top 5 recruiting class in the roster were Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, and Trevor Lawrence. Now, Clemson recruited bottom 9th or 10th. It wasn't like they were 30th, right?
Right.
Auburn
They're close.
was and so Auburn was a little 13th, 14th-ish, kind of like Auburn now, but then they just had Cam Newton. Michigan's recruiting classes have not been elite. What tied it together was the portal, Jim Harbaugh, and J.J. McCarthy. And I don't think that was reckoned with enough. And I think people thought there'd be plug and play with the quarterback position, and there just hasn't been. And so if you don't recruit, you better hit on the quarterback. There's a reason Dave Portnoy is saying he's going to spend $3 million in the quarterback. By the way, that's a dangerous game because there's a lot of rich people who are going to go out and try to get those quarterbacks. And also, by the way, you look at the portal rankings last year, that kid Julian Salen was ranked number 1 because of his high school recruiting ranking, and he's not even playing. I think Cam Ward was 4th on 24/7, and he was obviously the best quarterback in the portal, but maybe Will Howard wins national championship. Well, Will Howard took him a while to decide. He had some options there. So, the quarterback market going forward is going to be really fascinating on the transfer portal. We don't have to do that right now, but that's just – there's going to be some high-profile, $4 million quarterbacks.
Oh, man, there's going to be a Netflix doc one day of the quarterback portal recruiting wars that will blow people's minds right now. And I like you said, it's a 3-hour combo.
I always go back to Bud Elliott had a great line, I think it was last year, where he was like, people were saying, oh, but they can bust. These guys can bust. They're spending $2 million, they might be busts. And Bud was like, that's priced in. If they weren't going to bust, they'd be worth $20 million. It's
Exactly.
some billionaire in Georgia would be like, oh, great, yeah, no, we'll take him. He won't bust. Here's $20 million. Here you go. We're gonna win the national championship. The $2 million is priced in. They might bust. That's quarterback. Trevor Lawrence get $55 million, guys. There's a reason for that. All right, that's again. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. I could talk for an hour about this. I did just host a College Game Day podcast filling in for Reese Davis. You can find that on the ESPN 2 at 2:30 Eastern Time on Thursday. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words. Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. Let's talk about the draft. You have 3 players you want to highlight. I promise you, one of them was Cam Ward. Not my idea. It comes up in every podcast. I'm going to put that last so that we just don't get derailed. I want to start with someone from Penn State.
Yeah, Abdul Carter. I mean, now pass rusher. This is what Penn State does, right? They get a front 7 player that is one of the freakiest athletes in the recruiting class.
Yep.
They're going to play him at off ball. And then when it's money-making time, their draft-eligible year, okay, let's get after it and rush the passer, right? We saw, Micah Parsons didn't get that last year, but it would have happened with Micah Parsons, and he had that transition anyway to the NFL level. But when you look at Abdul Carter, this is someone that at 255 pounds is, in my opinion, one of the most explosive defenders in the entire country. But the question has always been, can you vary your pass rush approach? Can you win without just a speed rush or get him working on stunts and twists? And now we're seeing a guy over the last couple of weeks, especially against Illinois, where he had a couple sacks and 6 pressures. UCLA had 3 quarterback hits. So the last 2 games, you're seeing a guy working a spin move. You're seeing Penn State's defense stand him up over guards. And when you get those guards, their feet moving, they're not playing in a phone booth. This guy's a gap shooter. He's too fast. He's too quick. He can kind of, he's very slender through gaps. And then now somebody that's starting to use his hands a little bit more as well and chop down hands, see a 2-hand swipe action. I saw that against UCLA. This is the classic draft prospect that you go into the year and go, okay, based on the athleticism, he's a first-round player. Now on the pass rush production, I don't like to say sack production. I think pass rush production matters more for prospects. This is somebody that could be looking at himself being a top 3 to 5 pick. He has that kind of talent, that kind of athleticism. He's going to fly up boards. I don't think this pass rush class has really had the year people were hoping for, but he's somebody where things are running hot right now. And this is just what Penn State does. When these guys go to the combine and they run a sub 4.5 and he jumps 40 inches and the 3-cone is out of this world, and then you turn on the reps where it looks like he's starting to figure it out, those are the guys that teams bet on early.
So we had, I think it was 15 straight offensive players taken last year before a defender. And obviously great pass rushers are always going to be overdrafted. We didn't have that last year. Part of that was the Atlanta Falcons deciding they needed a second quarterback for some reason, but let's put a pin in that. What is going on with this pass rush class? Because as you mentioned, there were a lot of hopes pinned on it after last year's meh class.
It's one of those things where over the years, you come into the year, whether it was Chase Young, Nick Bosa, you have these expectations, and then the guy is just unblockable the first 2 months of the year, and Myles Garrett was a perfect example of that as well, and you're like, okay, he's everything we ever thought he was. With this year, it feels like we've been patiently waiting.
Yeah.
Even a guy like Nick Skirton from Texas A&M, a 280-pounder, but it's been a slower build, and I think he's turned the corner.
Good game
when you look at him. James... He's been great really the last 3 weeks, I think. It was just the first couple weeks of the season where you're expecting so much. And you forget that these guys he's a guy that changed conferences, right? He goes from the Big Ten to the SEC. James Pierce is someone that people have always had big expectations because he was a star freshman for Tennessee. But now you wonder with that body type, a 240-pounder, is he a pass rush specialist? Right. If you're a pass rush specialist, well, we'd like to see you have 14, 15 sacks in college that year. Right. So that's why it's just been a slower build for these guys.
Harold Perkins is hurt.
Perkins is hurt, and then Perkins fell on where to play him, right? Is he, an edge player? Is he an off-ball guy? Which is the scariest place to be when you're the college defender in the front 7, but you kind of are this overhang, strong safety style defender. But the injury is the biggest thing with Perkins that has really, really hurt him.
Yep, completely agree. And I'm hoping that we get some more. I hate, just as someone who loves tough football, I hate 15 offensive players going off the board before a defender. Come on, man. We got to get James. One of these guys has to pop. One of these guys has to pop. All right, you have a running back. We're going to get a little running back discourse, which I'm excited about. But this guy seems generational, Connor.
Yeah, very good. Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. And, you know, such a fun story. He's 5'8" and a quarter, 217 pounds. And you look at Jeanty and you go, okay, he had a really good year last year. The tape's really good. He doesn't end up transferring. But what can a 5'8" running back really do in terms of draft stock? And now you're looking at a player this year that he's averaging 10.9 yards per carry. I mean, nobody could tackle him. He's got elite balance. He's got great agility. He could factor into the pass game. He is so good with short area quickness and in tight areas, good, elite vision. I think he could really run in any scheme for you. He's someone that coming out of summer scouting, when Trevor and I on Stock Exchange and PFF, we go through every single position group. I couldn't believe I had him RB2. I'm like, this kid is an absolute star, only behind Judkins. He's been better than everybody by a mile this year. I mean, at the point where a 5'8" running back is in the conversation to go in the first round, and that's going to break brains, right? Because he's just that good. He's really, really that good. If you make people miss that often, you're constantly creating your own yards, whether you're in space or at the line of scrimmage, and you have that kind of contact balance, it's going to open up a really interesting conversation because we haven't seen a running back season like this. I don't know the last time we saw a running back season like this in college. He's been that special for that Boise State team.
Darren Sproles, probably. I mean, like I'm
in
sure
terms of just pure production, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
who gets to over 1,000 yards and under 100 carries? I mean, Sproles, that's stupid.
I just mean Sproles, you know, smaller school guy, obviously Kansas State, won the Big 12, obviously beat Oklahoma in that game. But also just like if you watch it now, going back, you're just like, God, he was so good. And he was small, but he carved out an unbelievable career for himself. And it's just really astounding. I'm sure there's guys in between and people get mad at us and put in the YouTube comments exactly who was missing in the middle there. It always gives me pause, Connor, when I know, more on the defensive side, but certainly at offensive skill guy too, I know in March of next year, all of the scouts who have podcasts, ex-scouts who have podcasts, their number one thing on Jeanty is going to be, well, your coordinator's got to have a plan for him. The reason that gives me pause is because NFL coordinators never have a good plan for anybody. Like just default to like they're not actually going to use him well unless the coach's name is Andy Reid. Okay, like everybody else, there's going to be growing pains and then whatever. So if you're an OC and you inherit Jeanty and your team drafts him and you say, all right, what is this going to look like at the NFL? He's 5'8", but he can get yards. He runs hard. What does that look like?
Man, well, he's also 217 pounds, so I'm going to put 20 touches on his plate from day one, without a doubt. And you look at what the Rams do with Kyron Williams right now, that's exactly what Ashton Jeanty should be. I mean, if you want to get him running downhill, but then you want to get him working in the screen game, once again, getting him in more space where he can make you miss. But the nice thing is, all the best, and you know this as well as anyone, Kevin, right now, I mean, all the best run game guys in the league have just such a varied approach. Nobody's sitting there and going, okay, we're outside zone 85% of the time. And everybody kind of has this stable of backs where they feel like, okay, I mean, take it all the way back to the Jets right now. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. Breece Hall, you prefer him to get working in outside zone. Braylon Allen is 240 pounds. You want him downhill. Everybody wants this stable of running backs that they could do different concepts. With Jeanty, scheme proof. I mean, you want to run outside zone, go for it. You want to run inside zone because the vision is perfect. But if you just want to be this downhill team, he could lower his shoulder. He keeps his legs churning. You love the 200. If he's 217 pounds now, he can come into the combine at 220 and probably still test really well. So it's almost idiot-proofing your coaching staff. Jeanty is what I like to call idiot-proofing. There's no instruction manual. A lot of prospects come with instruction manuals. Jeanty doesn't come with instruction manual. You put him on the field, and your job is already done.
I love that. All right, quarterback. You're going to say his name so that I don't have to.
You didn't make me do this. I brought it up to you. Cam Ward.
No.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Ward. Cam Ward from Miami. He has risen to being my current top quarterback in the class right now. And this is a really interesting field. I look at this. So coming out of summer, I had Cam Ward, I think 5th or 6th coming out of summer. I want to say 5th. I'll check right now. And you look at it, 5th for Cam Ward. I said there was no quarterback carrying a first-round grade out of summer. And that's a big change because the year before, Caleb Williams, surefire first-rounder. Drake May, I had a surefire first-rounder. And Michael Penix was actually my QB3. I had him in the first round. And then Jayden played his way up. Bo played his way up. McCarthy played their way up. This year, I looked at this group and I said, okay, maybe Carson Beck, maybe Quinn Ewers, maybe Shadur, maybe those three, one of them can try to play their way up. And I think it's been a tough go for Beck. I really liked what Quinn Ewers was doing before he got hurt. And then you look at Shadur, who's made some really big throws, but there's a lot to unpack there. He's not the kind of athlete that Cam Ward is, which is a big difference here. Cam Ward has always been a great athlete. He's always had a big arm. He could change arm angles. He could throw with touch. He could throw with velocity. The biggest thing with Cam Ward is really the battle against himself. And you look at last year, the turnover-worthy play rate was 3.6%. That's dropped all the way down to 2.7% this year. He's playing within his structure. He's understanding where his outlets are, where it's, okay, drop back 1-2. I understand where the running back is leaking out, or I understand the tight end sitting in the middle of the field. There's still the wild man. That's what makes him great. The wild man in him is not going away, because you need those plays. You need the 3-point shots to win games. He's going to take those. And sometimes he's going to throw it to the other team. You know who else does that in the NFL? And he's nothing like these guys yet. He's not that level of prospect, but the great quarterbacks, Mahomes, Allen, Jordan Love, those guys throw to the other team as well because they try to make plays. I still don't have a first-round grade on a quarterback in this class. If a guy is going to do it right now, I feel the most confident in saying Cam Ward can do it because he has the playmaking. I think he throws all areas of the field extremely well. He understands how to change his arm angles, arm slots. And I just think getting the turnover-worthy play rate down to that level of comfort really makes him a legitimate higher-end prospect now that I'm excited about him. I love watching him play every single week, and he's just got so many NFL traits at the position.
So the one thing I'll push back on is that you said he's not the prospect that Mahomes was. Mahomes had the same flaws, and you just said that, but like he understood that he had to put the team on his back at Texas Tech every single week, and so he tried to do too much. Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks did an amazing podcast in the 2017 season midway through saying, why didn't we see Mahomes as the best prospect of all time? Like, what the hell happened? And it was literally that he wanted to be Superman. And it's funny because Steve Young was on the show a couple months ago, and he said that the one thing that Mahomes has mastered is not only being Superman, but also being Clark Kent and just saying, okay, here's a 3-yard, run halfback pass. Like we're just going to take the easy thing, and that is why they've won 3 straight Super Bowls. It's not the Superman, it's the Clark Kent. To me, Cam Ward is starting to master the Clark Kent, and as you said, he has gotten that turnover-worthy play down. For me, he's almost like a supercomputer. He doesn't make the same mistake twice, and what I mean by that is with Cal, he was passing up the easy 8-yard completions because he was big game hunting. I think in large part because I think he underestimated the Cal pass rush. I don't think he thought they could get home. Then they got home for the first half, and he said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to start playing differently. Then he scores 29 points in the last 18 minutes of game time. He throws across his body, probably too much, but he completes them a lot. Like my guess is his across the body, and he had the pick 6 against Cal, but he probably completes the across the body throws more than anybody in college football right now. He had one across the body interception against Florida that was really bad, but then he had a across the body touchdown to Jacoby George for like 35 yards on a 3rd and 11 with somebody in his face. I think that he has gotten too comfortable with the idea that he can toy with defensive lines because you're going to see Max Crosby in the NFL, and you're not going to be able to do I'm just going to take one step back and fire it 40 yards down the field. But I think overall, I've never seen a guy, maybe I'm being crazy here, I've never seen a guy more comfortable on a football field than Cam Ward. What I mean by that is Jordan Reed put the stat up, or the film up, and I saw it in real time, but just seeing it from the coach's angle, Cal has 12 guys in the field, ref doesn't see it, Cam Ward gets the snap, points to the 12th man, spends the first second of the play pointing to the 12th guy who was running off the field. Ref throws the flag. He pats the ball once, hits Elijah Lofton, a true freshman, 25 yards down the field in the biggest drive of the game, biggest drive of the season. And I've never seen someone that calm in a football game to say, all right, you know what? I know these guys aren't going to get home. I'll draw the flag, and then Elijah Lofton's going to be open by the time I'm done pointing to somebody. I don't think I've ever seen anybody play football like this. Maybe I'm just being a homer, but I watch a lot of football, and I've not really seen anything like this. And I was in Gainesville. I was there for the Florida-Miami game, and I was really close to the sideline, and it was just like everything was loud. That stadium was loud. And it's like he was, doing 7-on-7 practice with Kyron Drones and Shadur in June.
That's the thing with him, that you just nailed it. That might be the most important aspect of it all. This position, you go to a higher level, I think you have to be sure of yourself. And I think the guys that you answer that question are the guys that have already been battle tested with adversity. It's a really big thing in the scouting world at quarterback, especially with some of the bigger misses over the last decade. Cam Ward is a guy that started his career at Incarnate Ward.
Yep.
So we're talking about not recruited, no one cared about him, and then he transfers up after 2 years starting there, obviously, to Washington State, where he played a lot of good football, but
they had one good offensive lineman the entire time he was there. Yeah.
Yes, he's running for his life. Fumbles were an issue, but he still made big plays.
Well, fumbles were an issue because he was getting the crap knocked out of him, and he was trying to do too much, and he was holding the ball. He's getting on those. I swallow my puke every time he gets hit in the open field. Not even a hint of a fumble so far.
Right. He has elevated his game now in a third place, where he's been such a game changer for them. But the person, right, the confidence that he has is maybe the most important aspect of all the special tools he has. When I saw the video of him really lighting into Shadur on the sideline of that summer workout, not only was I laughing, but I realized how serious he was as well. And then you see it kind of transpire or carry to the field, and you just understand that he's not really fazed by much. Comfort is a great word for it. It really, really is, because he knows he has special skills and he has confidence, and that carries wherever he goes. And the next stop will be the NFL after this year.
So real quick, I don't know him. I've never met him. I know he's a hard worker. I know that from Miami staff. Very, very hard worker. But the way he plays shows. So we had Kurt Warner on the show on Tuesday, on the ESPN 2 show. And he was talking about how too many guys understand, for lack of a better term, they understand the playbook and not the defenses, right? And the way that he takes the snap and just fires it in, these bucket shots and just splitting the safety and the cornerback, I think he has a supernatural ability to read defenses, not read college cornerbacks or, hey, this guy's got a little too much separation, or what we do in NCAA football where we go, hey, there's going to be a bunch of open space, let's just throw it there. I think he knows where everybody's going to be on the field at all times. And that to me is why I have no hesitation. I should probably not say this, even though who cares? I texted a GM, two decision makers who are going to have high picks this week. And all I said was Cam Ward, no matter what. And I've never felt like this about a prospect.
Yeah, and that's another important aspect, right? The pre-snap ability. What I said at the top of him going through reads and understanding where his outlets are, when he feels like, hey, maybe I didn't have it right here, I'm going to take a safe play, and that's okay, or I'm going to pick up the free yards with my legs. He is making tremendous pre-snap adjustments and reads. He understands where safeties are, rotating safeties, different coverages, because the confidence that he throws the ball with. And that's also a testament to the work ethic, because it's timing with his receivers. They understand when they have to have their head turned around. I mean, he's one of those guys that he'll snap the ball and he'll sidearm it 100 miles an hour across the middle of the field, and you better be ready to catch it. So I just think there's something extra to him that you really, really need at the position that I haven't been able to say that about other guys in this class, but every time I watch Cam Ward, I feel confident in that statement.
Did you see the Saban Herbstreit breakdown last week? Did you on game day? It's okay if you didn't.
No.
It was basically Saban talking about how he unlike most college quarterbacks, Ward is able to basically just control everything at the line and change the play at the line, and he clearly knows what's happening with the blitzers and stuff. And then he was talking about this, and you've probably seen it, where he just basically, throws a almost like an alley-oop screen to a running back when the pocket starts to collapse. And Saban was saying, like, that's the equivalent of a no-look pass, because of just how hard it is for a quarterback to see the blitzers. Everything is coming at him at once. The play is supposed to go to the right side. He just dumps it off to a screen. And he's like, that to me is the football equivalent of a no-look pass, even though we can see the running back, just because of what the play is geared towards. So I can't. We could go on an hour on this. We're done with Cam Ward. We're done with this episode. Connor Rogers, Fantasy Football Happy Hour with our buddy Matthew Berry. Anything else coming up for you?
We'll be on 5 days a week, of course. Jets pre and post game is gonna be a wild ride. It's gonna be a wild ride Monday night, so we'll see what happens there.
All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Kevin, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.